The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the speakers or authors and do not necessarily reflect or represent the views and opinions held by the producers of this broadcast. The material herein is for entertainment purposes only.
Welcome, Billy Roberts, to Afterlife Radio. Billy, it's so wonderful to have you. This is exciting. I look at your post. I mean, we haven't seen each other in years. And just to tell everybody, all the listeners, a little bit about Billy Roberts, especially those here in America, if you're not familiar with what he's done. Billy is one of the greats of the mediumship world in England and in the paranormal world. He has done paranormal investigations. In fact, I worked with him on one many years ago here in New Orleans. He is a master in mediumship and psychic abilities. He's written many, many books on it. And Billy is here because he's also got such interesting things to talk about, such as interdimensional beings, interdimensional travel. And welcome, Billy.
Hi, nice to speak to you again, Kalila.
Nice to speak to you too. This is so exciting, so exciting. And I have, for a long time I don't see people's. Often I don't go on Facebook so much, and I don't see people's, day-to-day posts, and but that one caught my eye. You had I'm going to say what it said. You are a multi-dimensional cosmic being with the ability to traverse between various dimensions, even whilst you live in this world of earth, sky, and human habitations. And that just caught my eye, and I thought, wow. So what does that mean? We hear so much about multi-universes and being able to be in, that we're really in more than one place at one time. I mean, does that tend to be true?
Well, this tends to transcend the phenomenon of astral travel. It's a little bit more than that. I mean, we have to understand that the human form is an electromagnetic unit of incredible power, drawing in and transmuting energy and discharging it, and is also contained within its own spectrum of color and light. Now, most paranormal enthusiasts will know what the aura is, but the aura is today a scientific as well as a metaphysical fact. In science parlance, the aura is referred to as human bioluminescence. It's an optical phenomenon that's seen around some deep-sea aquatic creatures. But it's a database of information. For anybody who has the ability to see the aura, will be able to access a broad spectrum of information about the individual to whom it belongs. It will tell you a lot about their past, their present, what they're going to do in the future. Even their health is contained in the bioluminescence. So we know that there's something unique about the human form. But man is an extremely complex, man and woman, I must say, before people write in and complain. Right. We are complex beings. We are, in fact, sevenfold creatures. We have 7 bodies, and each of these bodies is subdivided into 7, and so on in infinite succession. But we live in a particular world, a particular dimension, and these worlds, these invisible worlds, they interpenetrate each other. And most people know that we can probably travel in meditation. There's something in yoga or Buddhism called samadhi. It's a state of consciousness that we can glimpse just for a very short time in certain kinds of meditation. And samadhi is, you could equate it with nirvana, but touching upon that state of consciousness, you can also experience life in different spheres, different worlds. Now, this is completely contrary to what spiritualists believe, but I believe that when we pass over, for example, we don't really go anywhere. We just move from one dimension to another. And in the spirit world, there are no alternating periods of night and day. There's only a perpetual light that we carry in with us. And it's possible through certain kinds of meditation to access these particular dimensions and experience life in them. So I believe that we are cosmic beings. We're quite special individuals. And I do believe we've been here before. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it's fascinating. So. Yes. And I've kind of gotten, because I've been doing yoga for quite a few years now, and I've had some wonderful experiences because I have a great yoga teacher, and she's finally been the one where it's not just the positions. It's not just about the physical getting in the positions, and she opened up the door to really that integrating that body, mind, and spirit, and using the mudras, the hand, the different positionings of the hands and the breathing, the pranayama. And I have had a couple of instances where during a yoga session, I would kind of leave my body and kind of go somewhere else and then come back.
Yeah.
And I've also had some very strange, I shouldn't say very strange, but, some visions, some visions, and it's also been very helpful in my mediumship as well. So I can kind of wrap my head around this. I like this idea, and it's very interesting to me. Now, does this fall into the same realm of people saying, well, we're always in two places at one time, like in another dimension, we're doing something else? This multiverse theory, is this basically the same thing?
Well, it's very similar, but we can. Padre Pio, you've heard of him, have you?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Yeah, Padre Pio was somebody who could bilocate. Even when he was alive, he could be in two places at once and performed his healing processes while he was still in the body. And even now he's passed into the spirit world. He's still experienced by many different people. And Padre Pio is quite personal to me because one of the ladies who was, one of the cases who was put forward for his beatification, I met, and she actually gave me some of the oil anointed by him. And I had it for quite some time. I used to use it. And also one of his crucifixes, which I had, but unfortunately I gave that to somebody who wasn't too well. So I've got an affinity, if you like, with Padre Pio, as well as Saint Teresa of the Roses, because she too was quite unusual. She could bilocate and people could see her in many different places. So I think the more transcendence, I should have mentioned this, transcendence is a form of meditation that I teach, and it incorporates pranayama, which, as you said, is specific breathing exercises and bodily postures, and also the mudras are quite important. Each mudra means something in particular, and the more you practice transcendence, or in fact any meditation, the more proficient you will be at accessing these other dimensions. The majority of people often dismiss these experiences as imagination, and a lot of them are just imaginative. But the more you practice meditation and become accustomed to traversing from one dimension to another, the more vivid and the more experience you will have in them. So and yoga is quite important, hatha yoga particularly, because the asanas, the positions that you, as your teacher said, it's far more than an asana, than a bodily position, because you're integrating with some other place, some other universe, and you're directing your energies outwardly. And it's all fascinating to me. I mean, we've got to self-isolate for 3 months. So unfortunately, Kalila, you're here for 3 months listening to me going on about it all. I'm only kidding.
No, it's wonderful. No, I think it's wonderful. And I think that this could be used as an opportunity for you. I know you have your studio there and everything. And, this could actually be an opportunity for you to start offering these things possibly online, doing some sort of classes online. I don't know if you thought about that or not, but
I could certainly join up with you and do them online. Because the other thing about mediumship, I've been mediumistically inclined since I was a baby. My mother was a medium, my grandmother was a medium, and my aunt was a policewoman. She was a famous medium in the 1930s. And I learned different things from each of them, apart from my grandmother, who I never knew. She died 12 months before I was born. But I learned a lot from my aunt particularly, because she told me the old ways, the old methods, sitting in a circle with somebody you trust as a medium. And she taught me that mediumship is quite unique. She didn't believe that everybody possesses mediumistic skills. Everybody possesses a psychic skill, potentially, but mediumship is quite special. It's very, very rare. And I would say 70% out of 100 people can develop mediumistic skills. And meditation will teach you how to unleash that, and particularly transcendence meditation, which is in my book, The Nadi Technique. And it will tell you all about the different methods you can use to precipitate your mediumistic skills. So it is fascinating. I get very, I'm what's known as a skeptical medium, because as you've just said before, there are so many mediums, alleged mediums, in the UK and also in America. One asks yourself, are they all genuine? And I don't think so.
I think there's a lot of potential out there, but I've also seen a lot of people who want what I call, the magic bean. They want, I want to do this right away. They want the instant gratification. They want to, take a couple of hours of a class, and then, a week later they're teaching a class, and it's like, okay, that's not really what it's all about.
Yeah.
And I've seen that more and more, and I've kind of pulled away from a lot of different circles and so forth, just because I didn't feel drawn to it. And I've learned so much. I've had many, many different teachers. I mean, you've taught me so much, and reading your books has taught me so much. And, I've studied with, wonderful people, Christine Morgan, Scott Milligan, just really wonderful people that I admire and respect. But I felt myself pulling more away from the spiritualist ideas of things and following more of the spiritist with Allan Kardec.
Allan Kardec, yeah.
Yeah, and so my circles that I'm in, we follow more of that philosophy, which it's not a whole lot different, but it's a little bit different. But as you know, my path, I had gotten involved a lot over the last couple of decades, being from New Orleans, getting involved. And I am primarily Catholic, but being involved in voodoo and Santeria and the African traditional religions. And they all used a lot of the spiritism in their mediumship developments, and, their ideas of what the afterlife is, and communication with the other side was very, very different. And like you said, in these traditions, they don't believe that it's somewhere else over there. It's just, it's just parallel to us. It's just right there. It's just there. You just reach out and you can touch it. And so it's very interesting. Some of my studies even brought me down to Brazil a couple of years ago. Wow. So, very interesting. A little bit of differences, but so I tend to go more in that direction. But I'm also very connected with, like I said, my yoga practice and a lot of the Eastern philosophies. And, you find that it's all connected. It's just all connected.
just a different title, really. Well, I think we might have discussed this once before, but in 1903, a neuroscientist by the name of Ivan Tutinsky, a Polish man in Moscow University, he'd received so much information about people with unusual skills. He compromised his professional integrity by investigating it, and he was ridiculed by his peers because he neglected his real work and studied these people with unusual skills. And he discovered that children, the pineal gland in a child, was larger than in an adult and more developed in a female than it was in a male. So we concluded that the pineal gland was a sort of a radar device, a sort of a neurological system that could transmit and receive information. And in more recent years, in America, in California University, I think it was, they did autopsies on the deceased mediumistic people, and it concluded what he said, it confirmed what he said, that the pineal gland was surrounded with crystalline deposits. And in a mediumistically inclined individual, the pineal gland was quite large. There was an abnormality in the brain, particularly at the old part of the brain, the prehistoric brain, at the back of the bony box. So they knew that there was some kind of difference in a mediumistically inclined individual. So they did lots of tests on people with these skills. Now, the thing about mediumistic abilities, they don't stand up in laboratory testing. I mean, I've been in Hope University in Liverpool. Dr. Kieran O'Keefe subjected me to some tests, and it didn't really stand up as much as a psychic ability could. Psychic abilities are different. They'll work in any kind of environment, and you can do anything with them. But mediumship is completely different, because if we work on the premise that people are still alive when they die, then you wouldn't expect them to be there 24 hours a day at your beck and call. So mediumship is experimental. It doesn't always work for many different reasons. And as always, I've digressed. I've gone into something completely different. But at the end of Tutinsky's research, he found that he had a lot of admiration from the people he worked with, because he broke down barriers and made people less skeptical about people with unusual abilities. Although he avoided the term psychic and mediumship or mediumistic, he knew that people with skills could transcend the bounds of the physical world and access these different spheres. Now, there are many different spheres, and we experience them when we're going to sleep of a night. The hypnagogic state is when you're not quite asleep and you're not fully awake. And you might be drifting into sleep, and you might hear somebody call your name or have these minute faces passing through your mind. And, you know, they mean nothing. They're very anonymous, but you have all the experiences just before you go to sleep. And then the hypnopompic state, is, you know, that feeling when you've had a deep sleep and you're waking up in the morning, you're not fully awake. You're just lying there half asleep. And you have all these other experiences as well, where things can occur, people can come to you, because the spirit world is not a place. It has nothing whatsoever to do with places. It is a condition, a transcendental state that we access sometimes when we're half asleep, sometimes in meditation, but you can access it at your will. You can actually develop the ability to access these worlds and meet beings that have never really had an experience of a physical life. You know, people that might be extraterrestrial, I don't know, but I've had some encounters with people who don't look like people. They seem to have an energy that, you know, they want to help humankind. They want to help you in your endeavors and promote peace and healing on the planet. And then you realize that the planet upon which we live is a living organism. She lives and breathes. And we are connected to this planet by some invisible umbilical cord. Now, we know that in complementary medicine, particularly acupuncture, you have meridians. Meridians is a network of these channels all over the body. And if you have a problem like a back problem or migraine, we can visit an acupuncturist who believes that the energy congests in these channels, and by inserting some fine needles, they can release the congestion and alleviate the problem. And the same thing with reflexology. They believe all these channels are located in the feet, and energy crystallizes in the feet. But by gentle manipulation, you can break down the crystallization and cause the energy to flow, this pranic energy. Well, nadis are something completely different. In yoga, nadi means channel or river, and a meridian is equated with the trunk of a tree. But the nadi is the branch of the tree, and there are millions of nadis permeating the human form. And they're often overlooked by practitioners. But these nadis play an important part in the manifestation of consciousness, and particularly in the development of mediumship or healing. And there are many different techniques you can use to clear these channels, to make them more receptive to external forces. Again, it's in my book, The Nadi Technique, Self-Healing.
Right.
That's basically it.
Stay tuned for more Afterlife Radio.
Submitted for your approval. New Orleans. Seductive, magical, mysterious, and haunted. There is no place on this earth with as much ghost and vampire activity as New Orleans. Imagine, if you will, a tour. A tour that takes you to sites in the French Quarter of actual documented hauntings. The Haunted History Tour is just that tour. Every day, every night, all year round. This tour has been featured on ABC, CBS, NBC, and CNN. And it's available to you. Are there ghosts and vampires in the French Quarter? Find out by taking the tour that everyone is talking about. The Haunted History Tour. For more information, call Haunted History Tours at 861-2727. That's 861-2727. This is not a Halloween spookhouse. This is real.
You're listening to Afterlife Radio.
It's fascinating stuff, and it's wonderful to get a fresher perspective on something, because I think too many people, especially here, we're so limited on we don't have the advantage that you do there, where mediumship was something that was in the families. It was something that people did, after Sunday dinner, people got together and they did seances, and it was not part of our culture here. It was something that people, if they are in tune to it, they have to kind of reawaken and kind of readdress. So, we have to learn it from other people. And I think people get stuck. They'll find one teacher and they like that one teacher and they want to do it that one way. And then they get comfortable and they don't open up to other things. And they start getting in that one track, the one trick pony, to where it's like, okay, well, so-and-so says, and so-and-so says, and this person says. And it's like, okay, but what are you experiencing? What are you,
Exactly.
You have to step out and try to, and I can really grasp a lot of this because I studied. I was a body worker many, many years ago, and I taught it, and I didn't take acupuncture, but I studied acupressure, and I was an advanced Asian body worker. So I studied the meridians and everything, and so I understand the concept and all, and it is true. I mean, if you are in mediumship, you would definitely develop it much more if you start awakening these avenues. So it's absolutely fascinating, and I think that perhaps now is the time that people need to start looking at this sort of thing and really addressing it. And there's been other things that I've encountered. For instance, going to some of these afterlife conventions and running across people. For instance, there were people who did the out of body experience, the astral projection, and claim to have experiences in what they refer to as the afterlife. And I think that this interdimensional travel and where people go when they pass away, and even what people are calling UFOs and aliens, I think all of this is very related. I think a lot of what people see when they think they see what they call something from outer space is really something from another dimension, perhaps. And I don't know, I haven't experienced it for myself, but I've always wondered if they're not really seeing something totally different and interpreting it the way we have been taught to interpret it, that It's a space being, it's something from another planet, when in fact it's actually something from another dimension.
Exactly. I believe that totally. I've always believed that these UFOs, these crafts, are not from another planet. They're from the future of our planet, or even from another dimension, as you just said. And it's very, the more you get into it, the more you realize there's so much to understand. Going back to what you mentioned about mediumship, what I have always found, and you probably agree with me, a lot of people think because a person's a nice person, a pleasant disposition, that constitutes a good medium. And that's not true, because I found a lot of brilliant mediums are not very nice people. But I've seen it so many times where a person has said, well, you've got to go and see this person. She's brilliant, or he's brilliant. And you go along to see them. And it's just because they're nice and flowery and they have a nice way of working. But the content of what they're giving is very weak and ambiguous. And so before I ever started working as a medium professionally, I must have seen 2,000 mediums privately and publicly, and collected all the recordings of them to make a study of how they worked. And when you look at it objectively, we only hear what we want to hear from a medium, particularly if it's a nice person, someone we trust. But mediumship, as I said earlier on, is quite specific. It has to produce detailed information, not you've got a guide who's a North American Indian, or can you take the name John, or these vague names, these random names. Mediumship has to be specific and give detailed information about where the person lived, perhaps a second name, and also paint a picture about the family they had, what they died with, and the height, the color, not just random names or weak messages. And that's what we strive for as a medium. But again, that doesn't always work. It doesn't work all the time like that. And the general public today are becoming more discerning because it's on television. People know more about mediumship. They read about it, and they can be quite cruel. So you don't get away with a great deal in this day and age. You have to be good at what you do, because people criticize you. They'll pull you to pieces. So you have to be on your toes and be good at what you do and do a good job. Don't you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that's one of the things that I've really tried to, I don't even do platform work anymore. I've kind of pulled away from it mainly because I was having back trouble, and standing was very difficult for me. But I started getting more involved in more of the automatic writing and doing a lot of the mediumship through art and pictures and just trying different things, just experimenting and seeing where it flows and where it would take me. But when I do mental mediumship and do work with that, it's just and this is one of the things that I loved about working with Christine, is that trying to get the essence of that spirit, trying to really connect with who that person is. And what that person represents, and how that person felt, and what that person how they laughed and how they moved, and who they really were, not just a name or how they died, or or they're there with you and giving these vague kind of bland, what I call plain vanilla messages to people, and there's nothing to it. I think when you're going to do mediumship, you need to really, give them something, give them some content, give them really something to connect with. And I've been very fortunate that
I must say this. Sorry to interrupt you, but when you came to Cornwall, we worked together. The contrast of the two different mediumistic styles was noticeable. And people, as I said to you earlier on, people still talk about you. And the people that you gave messages to still remember the message and often relate what you said to me. When are you coming back? Because people really enjoyed it. The fact that you have a certain persona, you presented yourself completely different to any UK medium that I've ever worked with. And everybody enjoyed it. And that's why you've got to come back.
Oh, I want to. I really want to, believe me. And I think, and I think it's that Kardecian style that's also, not just that I studied here, because I did study, with people from the UK and the spiritualist way of doing things. But I think it was the years prior to even really purposefully developing my mediumship, I was involved in these spiritual circles, the Kardecian circles. Yeah. And just getting, through the Santeria and, having that Cuban influence coming in, and that really, I think that kind of shaped where I was at. And then I found myself kind of moving back towards that because, I don't know, it just kind of ingrained itself.
But Alan Kardec was quite an unusual man, and he was criticized for the things he did. And you find that in all ages, people with new ideas and unusual abilities are often criticized by people who don't understand it. And we had it with Jesus, and I'm not spouting religion, but Jesus, I'm sure to God, if Jesus was here today, people would still pull him down and say, no one walks. Sure. Yeah. And you get Absolutely. This in all walks of life. But as I said, mediumship now, you've got to have broad shoulders and be prepared for all the criticism that the skeptic will throw at you. Not just skeptics, people who always think they're better than you, because it seems to be the epicenter for jealousy, the mediumistic world, and certainly spiritualism. I walked away from spiritualism many years ago because I just found it a little bit too hard to handle with all the criticism and all the jealousy, and it was awful. And that's why I started the Thought Workshop, which was the UK's first centre for psychic and spiritual studies and complementary treatment, because it gave the opportunity to anybody who thought they had an ability without actually being involved in a religion. Because even today in the UK, although television has done a great deal for mediumship, it's also done a lot of damage in some regards, because spiritualism still gets a lot of criticism. It still has a stigma attached to it because, to be honest, it's old-fashioned and it needs to change to come up to the 21st century and start making it more appealing to the younger people, because all the mediums are getting older. Now you want young blood, and there's a lot of people with potential out there in America and also in the UK, young people, 18 years old, 16 years old, I've seen them, with amazing skills. And you think, well, where are they going to go with it? Sometimes they grow out of it and they turn away from it and find other interests. But if it's really in your blood, you will pursue it. Now, my wife and I are, we do a lot of different work. We're members of AMORC, the Ancient Mystical Order of the Rosicrucians. And reading through their manuals, you see a lot of the techniques they use is very old. It's very old-fashioned, archaic. But when you look at the way they present them, you think these old things do work. They have something about the old exercises, that you can use. A lot of the techniques are in yoga as well, because in yoga, the development of siddhis, which is psychic abilities, you don't go into yoga to develop these abilities, but they come along, they develop in the course of time. The more you practice yoga and these disciplines, mental and physical disciplines, then the siddhis will develop in you, and these psychic skills can develop. And I think I've seen I've only known one yoga teacher who was malicious and unaffected by her yogic practice. I won't mention any names in case you know her, but the majority of yoga teachers are very disciplined, and they're also very spiritual. They teach people how they want to be taught themselves, and they have a lot of good qualities. I'm rambling now, Kalila.
No, it's wonderful. No, it's wonderful information. It's wonderful. I'm just enthralled in listening to it. Just getting to hear your voice after not speaking to you for so long is wonderful. But no, it's wonderful. It's interesting. It's very, very interesting and refreshing, because you're right. There's just so much. It's the same thing. You have a lot of and not to put anybody down, but you have a lot of cookie cutter mediums, cookie cutter psychics, cookie cutter mediums. Yeah. And, people will take classes, like when I take a class, Sid Patrick's opened up some doors to bring some mediums here, which has been wonderful, because it's a lot easier than trying to get to another country to study with these people. And I take classes, and, I'll never forget, I was in one of Scott Milligan's classes, and someone said, during one of the exercises, they said, but you didn't speak. Spirit didn't speak through you. And I said, I'm not here for Spirit to speak through me. If Spirit was going to speak through me, they would have been speaking through me all along. Mm-hmm. I'm not here for that. I said, I'm here to get what I am meant to get from this.
Exactly.
Not to be a carbon copy. I said, Scott is who Scott is. Scott does that. I'm not going to do what Scott does. I'm going to do what Kalila does. And I'm just here to take what Spirit is willing to, where Spirit's willing to bring me, and I figured, if I just learn to sit in the power better, I will get something out of this. No matter what I do in this class, I will get something out of it. But to go with the intent of trying to be like him, you're not going to be like him. He's like him. That's who he is. And people sometimes miss that. And I think there's too much ego, and people don't understand they have to let go of the ego. You can't have both. You can't hold on to the ego and say, it's not about look what I can do. Wow, look what I can do.
Exactly.
It has to be coming from a different place.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I love about the people that I do study with, is that they are coming from that place of really truly, representing Spirit.
Yeah. And interesting point you just made about you've got to be yourself. Because I've seen so many times people have their favorite mediums, so they try to mimic them, they try to be like them, and it just doesn't work, because that particular medium is unique, and you do have to develop your own style, as you've just said. You have to be yourself, and you can't make it work. You have to go with whatever's given to you. And I've seen it so many times where people have their favorites and try to be just like that medium. Crazy.
Yeah. And I don't know. I guess people have to find their own way. And I've been fortunate enough that I've been able to experience different things, and I've gone down different spiritual paths long before I really started seriously, trying to work on, really developing various forms of mediumship. I mean, when you and I worked together many, many years ago, I was working, really just on a psychic level. I mean, for the years, I was 20 years into, working with the paranormal, and I thought that I was connecting, with the other side. And it wasn't until my daughter passed away until I realized I hadn't even scratched the surface. You know, I was talking to the dead, but
Yeah.
I was not doing true mediumship. I really wasn't, even though I'd spent years in circles, you know, doing the spiritual mesas, the Kardecian mesas, and I really thought that I was reaching that other side. And it wasn't until I stepped further and got involved with the spiritualist and started furthering my studies and getting a little more, you know, regimented with it and really delving further into it. But and that was 20 years into it that I came to this realization. Wow, I thought I was doing this, and I really wasn't doing it, and I wasn't doing it right. And that's what people don't understand. And so sometimes I come across people think I'm being ugly when I go, well, you're not going to take a weekend class and know it all. You can't.
Exactly.
They don't realize that it takes, you know, it's not just even a couple of years. It's, you know, decades. It's decades. And some people who spend their entire lives developing what the, you know, these gifts that we have, and these different things. And it's not just one way. It's, you have to be flexible to say, okay, let me try this over here and let me, you know, check this out.
Yeah.
One of the things that really opened my eyes was when I went to Brazil. Oh my gosh. A couple of years ago, I spent a couple of weeks in Brazil, and I got the pleasure of going to numerous houses of Umbanda, where they go into trance, and you see an entire room full of people going into trance simultaneously. And then they put people in a line and they go up, and the mediums pick you, and they come up, and you're talking to people. And it was so bizarre. You're talking to people. There was one gentleman, I got a reading from this man. He comes up to me and he just starts talking to me, and he's speaking English, perfectly good English. Well, afterwards, when spirit left him, he only spoke Portuguese.
Wow.
Not a word of English. And I had, you know, Sylvia, who brought me there, was my interpreter. And she says, oh, he speaks English, you're fine. But we would sometimes be talking to mediums and thinking that we're having a conversation with a person and not even realizing that they were in trance. There was one woman I spoke to, you know, for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and I'm just chatting away with her, and she's telling me, and she kept telling me, well, you don't worry about anything. She's basically giving me a reading. I think I'm getting a psychic reading from someone. And she says, if you ever need me, you just stomp your feet and you say my name and I'll be with you. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm thinking, you know, I don't know how she's going to do that because she's here in Brazil and I won't be here, but okay. And then I see her when she gets up off the chair, she walks across the room and she starts spinning counterclockwise, and there's people standing there to grab her. And I said, oh my gosh, she was in trance. I had no idea she was in trance that whole time. As she came out of trance, she's spinning and they grab her and she's, you know, practically passing out. And it was like, oh my gosh. And it was like I was sitting there talking to spirit all that time and had no clue.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And I tell people this, you know, sometimes I tell some of these mediums at workshops this, and they say, oh, I want to go. Next time y'all go, I want to go to Brazil. And it's like, but you don't understand. I could maybe go a million more times and not have the same experience that I had that one time. That was my experience that one time. If I go back, it might be a totally different experience. You can't remake that experience. You can't recreate it. It was all very spontaneous. It's all done by spirit. It's all done on the other side. They don't understand that.
Exactly. What I've noticed about you, though, and I've said this in one of your books, since you lost your daughter, you've become a different person altogether. And it's obviously affected, because sometimes if you lose somebody close to you, like a daughter or a son or somebody you deeply love, sometimes that can lead you away from spiritual things. And mostly, though, it brings you closer. And it also, in you, it's developed another kind of awareness, as you've just admitted yourself. You understand your mediumship more, and it's taken on a different meaning. You know, you present it in a different way. And I think sometimes that's what happens when you lose somebody like a daughter who you cared for and who you were very close to. So, you know, she's gone physically. There's a huge piece of you gone from your piece of you gone with her. But she's left something else. She's left a bigger part of her in your life. And I think, to me, it's obvious because I speak to you now and I can see, how you feel and how you have developed yourself over the years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stay tuned for more Afterlife Radio.
Step beyond the veil that separates our world from the world of spirits with me, Kalila Smith, as we uncover the mysteries of the afterlife. This is a spiritual journey as we try to discover if life really does continue after the physical death. Are after-death communications real, or do we imagine them? Get my book, Afterlife Mysteries Revealed, and find out. Afterlife Mysteries Revealed, available on Amazon.com by Kalila Smith.
You're listening to Afterlife Radio.
She's always very close by, and she's gotten to where she communicates with a few exceptions, but she will communicate through people who are not mediums more than she will communicate with people who are mediums. I think it's a game she plays, but she'll do things. I have all sorts of people. She always, her symbol has always been to me a butterfly. So she makes people buy me butterfly things. And I have people that will come to me, and one woman in particular who's now a friend, I met her, she was a client. I was going to another city to do readings, and she had made an appointment, and she walked in and she says, I have a gift for you. And I said, oh, that's not necessary. And she says, no, I had to give this to you. And I opened it up, and it was a jeweled hair clip, and it was a blue butterfly with jewels all in it. And she said, I had lost it for 20 years, and I was cleaning my dresser, and I found it. And she said, I heard a little sweet voice say, give it to her. She wants it.
Uh-huh.
And things like this happen with complete strangers. They're like, I don't know why, but something told me you had to have this. And I'm just like, okay, I know why. So I've started a collection of butterflies because she literally forces people to buy me gifts and send me butterflies. So it's kind of amusing. But yeah, it's definitely changed me. It's absolutely changed me. And when you have a child, I mean, they're a part of your life. They're part of who you are. And it's not like you just say goodbye and you go about your business. It's just like I have my other daughter here, and I speak to her every day. The same with Stephanie. I mean, she's never really gone. In fact, my little studio now is what used to be her room. It's covered in butterflies. So as I speak to you, I'm sitting with the butterflies in her room. And it's definitely changed me. And I think a lot of people have been. I've heard a lot of people say that it brings them deeper into mediumship when they suffer a loss like this.
They understand the skill more than anything, more than before. There's a dramatist. Well, he's a little-known mystic. His name is Maurice Maeterlinck. He's a Belgian dramatist. I think he died in 1946. And he wrote a book called Treasure of the Humble, which is out of print, but you can get it on Amazon. And he was a friend of a lot of Allan Kardec's devotees. And he was a spiritist. And this book, Treasure of the Humble, it's a philosophy of life. He covers death, he covers birth, he covers silence. And he has a poetic way of writing. You should get it if you can.
Oh, I'd like to, yeah. A lot of people don't realize Kardec was not a medium himself. He was actually a skeptic. There was nothing about him that even remotely believed in this. He was a skeptic. He was a man of science. He wanted proof. He tested other mediums and what he wrote. And he was also a very devout Catholic. So Spiritism is not a religion. There is no church of Spiritism. No. It is just a philosophy. So it's been adopted by many religions. But I would like to read that because...
I think you would enjoy it. And each chapter covers a different aspect of life. And, I've had it. An elderly lady gave it to me just before she died. It must have been about 25 years ago now. And I couldn't really get into it initially. And then I thought, when I read it, bit by bit, it opened up a new aspect of life for me. And I could see it was very meaningful. I don't know whether the lady was trying to tell me something. She was a a very close friend of my Auntie Lou, who was the medium. But it's falling to pieces now, my copy. And I was lucky to get a newer version. But you'd enjoy it. You really would. And it would.
Yeah, I'll check it out. Definitely. Definitely. Well, tell me a little bit about your house. Tell me, because you were telling me this before I started the show, was about you. So you live in a house that was lived in by a witch, supposedly a witch, right?
Well, it started life because we live in a very small, close-knit community. It's called Trevone, and there are only 3 people, I think, who actually live in the street. They're all second home people. So it's a quiet place. And we're about 30 yards from the beach. So in the winter, it's very quiet. And strangely enough, it's a very small cottage. And it's 400 years old. But it started life as a stable, apparently. And the house opposite, which is a wood structure house, it's owned by some people who live in London. Apparently, that was the garden. So it had a garden, and we're right onto the street. So it's not very private in the summer. People look through the window to see, because it's a typical Cornish house. So now we've got this bell that chimes, and it has a camera on it. So I can speak to the people who are looking through the window and say, can we help you? But it's got, I don't know whether you know this, in Cornwall, in the 1600s, 1500s, they used to bury dead cats, by the front door, because the cats would ward off evil spirits.
Oh, wow. But no, I didn't know that.
They were great, the Celts, the Cornish people, are great believers in witchcraft, always were. And there were lots of very famous witches in the locality of Padstow and Trevone. People used to consult them for medicines and spells. But one of the things the witches used to do, you could buy from them a bottle with the Passion of Christ on it, and it would have a spell in it. And you'd have to bury this somewhere in your home. Well, this house was actually lived in by a witch a few hundred years ago. And she actually hid the bottle under the stairs. And obviously it's been slightly refurbished over the years since she lived here. But the people who owned it before we lived here, they respected it. Everybody knows what it is. And they left it sealed in the cupboard under the stairs. So we don't touch it. We've never seen it. So we believe it's there. We only rent this property. The owners have told us it's there. But you can't touch it because it's a protective thing. It wards off evil spirits.
Right, so
it's full of activity, the house, as you'd expect. Doors open by themselves. If we're talking about something in particular, and we can't reach a conclusion about it, the bathroom door latch, all the original latches are on the door, will go up and down and make a noise. And doors will open then. We have 2 cats, 2 house cats, Ellie and Poppy. Ellie, you've seen them, haven't you?
Yes.
Yeah, you have. Of course you have. And Ellie's the feisty one, and Poppy is a demure, refined pussycat. She's the Felix cat with a white bib. The woman who lived here before us, a lady called Babe, she was known as the baby woman because she delivered a lot of babies. She was quite elderly when she died. And she must have had 3 or 4 cats. Well, we see these cats milling around the house. And our 2 cats, they sit up bolt upright with their ears pricked. And they watch the cat, and I can see it. And Dolly can see one of the cats walking across the room. And our 2 are watching it. But they don't tackle it. They don't try to fight it. They just watch intently. And it makes them unnerved. And then we've got a chest of drawers upstairs with the television on in our bedroom. And in the middle of the night, you'll hear a cat jump on it and then jump off. And you'll hear the cat food bowl making a noise, the dry food. We think it's our cats. And when we sit up, We've got one cat who sleeps with Dolly behind her on the pillow, and the other one sleeps with me beside me. So they're still on the bed, and this ghost cat will be eating their food and making noises, and it's quite unusual.
Oh, that's so neat. What an interesting place.
But the whole ambience of the place, you walk in off the street right into our living room. It's got two coal fires, and it's Dolly's an interior designer, and she's made it quite homely, and we love it because it's just got an atmosphere that represents all the things that have been in the past. And I'm sure the witch was a good lady, because there's nothing bad here, nothing untoward. So that's our little cottage.
Wow, that sounds so wonderful. All right, well, Billy, it's been a wonderful, wonderful pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I mean, I can't thank you enough. This has been such a gift. It really has.
I enjoyed it, Cleland. Thank you for having me.
All right, listeners, thank you so much for tuning in, and join us again for another episode of Afterlife Radio Podcast. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.